There is one moment that changes everything. Not when an avoidant pulls away, not when they go cold or disappear, but when they do something so small, so quiet, so easy to miss, that most people scroll right past it. And that one moment is actually telling you something profound. It is telling you that this person is not going anywhere. That underneath all the distance, all the silence, all the confusion, there is something real holding them to you. And today I am going to show you exactly what that looks like, why it happens, and what it means for your situation right now. You have been living in a kind of emotional in-between. Not fully together, not fully apart. Just suspended in this exhausting space where you are constantly trying to read the signals. One day they are warm, present, almost the person you fell for completely. They laugh with you, they text first, they look at you in that way that makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. And then something shifts. You cannot even pinpoint what happened. There was no fight, no obvious moment. They just retreated. The messages slow down. The energy changes. And you are left sitting there trying to figure out what you did wrong. You check your phone. Nothing. You replay the last conversation looking for the thing you said that might have pushed them away. You start editing yourself, shrinking yourself, being careful about what you share because you do not want to scare them off again. And the worst part is not even the silence. The worst part is the hope. Because just when you start to pull back, just when you start convincing yourself that this is not worth it, they come back. Warm again, present again. And your heart opens right back up before your mind even has a chance to protect you. That cycle is exhausting. It is genuinely one of the most draining emotional experiences a human being can go through. Because it is not clean pain. It is not a clear ending you can grieve and move on from. It is this constant loop of closeness and distance, hope and disappointment, warmth and silence. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, you started to lose track of what is real and what you are just desperately hoping is real. Can you see yourself in this? If you can, I want you to know something important before we go any further. What you are feeling is not weakness. It is not neediness. It is not you being too much. It is the completely natural response to a completely confusing situation. And today, something is going to shift for you. Here is something that most content about avoidant attachment gets completely wrong. It focuses almost entirely on the withdrawing, the pulling away, the silence. And yes, that is real and that matters. But what almost nobody talks about is the other side of that equation. The moments where an avoidant actually shows you something. The small, specific, easy-to-miss signs that reveal what is genuinely happening underneath all that distance. And this is not just my observation. There is real psychology behind this. A landmark study by researchers Mikulincer and Shaver, two of the most respected names in attachment research, found something fascinating. Avoidant individuals do experience emotional connection. They do feel attachment. But their nervous system has learned, usually from very early experiences, to suppress the expression of those feelings. Not eliminate them, suppress them. That is a critical difference. Because suppression means the feelings are still there. They are just being held down. And sometimes, in certain moments, they leak through. In ways that are subtle. In ways that are easy to dismiss if you do not know what you are looking for. I have spent 12 years studying attachment psychology. I have worked with hundreds of people navigating exactly the kind of relationship you are in right now. And I have also lived this personally. I know what it feels like to love someone who runs from closeness. I know the confusion of being shown just enough warmth to stay, and just enough distance to keep you uncertain. So when I tell you that there are real signs that an avoidant is genuinely attached to you, I am not saying it to give you false hope. I am saying it because the psychology is clear, the patterns are consistent, and knowing how to read them correctly changes everything about how you see your situation. What you are going to learn today is not surface level. We are going to go deep into the specific signs that reveal genuine attachment in an avoidant person. Not the obvious things, the real things. The things that happen in ordinary moments that most people completely overlook because they are waiting for grand gestures that an avoidant will almost never give. Because here is the truth about avoidant attachment. The love does not always look like love. It looks like something quieter, something smaller. And once you know how to see it, you will never miss it again. So stay with me through this entire video, because what I am about to share with you is going to reframe everything you thought you understood about this person and what they are actually showing you. This first sign seems so obvious that most people completely dismiss it. And that is exactly why I am starting here. Because the dismissal of this sign is costing you so much clarity. When an avoidant pulls away, the withdrawal itself feels like the whole story. The silence, the distance, the coldness, that becomes the thing you fixate on. And understandably so. It hurts. It feels like rejection. It feels like they are telling you something about how much you matter to them. But here is what you are missing. The withdrawal is only half of the pattern. The other half is the return. And the return is where the real information lives. Think about your own situation right now. How many times have they pulled away? And how many times have they come back? Not because you chased them down or gave them an ultimatum, but on their own, quietly, a message out of nowhere, a comment that opens the door again, a moment of warmth that appears without explanation. That return, that consistent, repeated return, is one of the most significant signs of genuine attachment an avoidant person can show you. Here is the psychology behind it. Avoidant attachment forms when a person learns early in life that emotional closeness comes with risk. Maybe their needs were dismissed. Maybe vulnerability led to pain. Maybe the people they depended on were inconsistent or overwhelming. So their nervous system built a defense. When intimacy gets too close, the system fires an alarm and they pull back to regulate themselves. That is the withdrawal. But here is what that defense cannot do. Cannot erase genuine feeling. It can suppress it, it can delay it, it can create distance from it, but it cannot make it disappear. So after the withdrawal, after the nervous system has calmed down and the alarm has stopped firing, what is left? The feeling. Still there. And it pulls them back toward you. Picture this. You had a beautiful evening together. Laughing, connected, completely present with each other. And then 2 days later they go quiet. No explanation, just distance. You spend those days in your head wondering what happened. And then on day 4 they send you something small. A meme that reminded them of a conversation you had. A voice note. A casual message that pretends the distance never happened. And your heart does that thing where it leaps and breaks at the same time. What that moment is actually telling you is this. The connection was real enough to pull them back. Their nervous system needed the distance, but their attachment needed you. And the fact that they keep returning, not once, not twice, but consistently, means the attachment is winning. Every single time. So what does this mean for you specifically? Stop measuring their feelings by the withdrawal. Start measuring them by the return. Because an avoidant who feels nothing does not come back. They simply stay gone. The return is the truth. The withdrawal is just the defense mechanism doing what it was built to do. And this next point connects directly to that defense mechanism in a way that is going to make everything much clearer for you. Point 2. They remember the small things you never expected them to remember. Slight eyebrow raise, warm eye contact. This one stops people in their tracks when I explain it, because it is so easy to overlook. And yet, when you hear it, something inside you is probably going to click into place. Avoidant people are not known for being emotionally expressive. They do not typically shower you with compliments or send you long messages about how much you mean to them. So when affection does come from them, it rarely looks the way you expect affection to look. It does not arrive in grand declarations. It arrives in memory. They remember the name of your childhood dog that you mentioned once in passing. They remember that you said you were nervous about a work presentation 3 weeks ago and they ask you how it went. They remember that you do not like a certain food, that you always order your coffee a specific way, that a particular song makes you emotional. They file these things away quietly without drawing attention to it, and then they surface at the most unexpected moments. Here is the psychology behind why this happens. There is a concept in attachment research called emotional encoding. When we feel genuine connection with someone, our brain encodes details about them at a deeper level. Not because we are consciously trying to remember, but because the emotional significance of the person makes the brain pay closer attention. Everything about them feels important at a neurological level, so it gets stored. Avoidant individuals, despite their emotional suppression on the surface, experience this encoding just like anyone else. The difference is that for them, remembering becomes one of the few safe ways to express that the person matters. It does not require vulnerability. It does not open them up to the risk of rejection. It just says quietly, without saying it at all, I was listening. You matter to me. I think about you. Picture this. You are having a casual conversation and you mention offhand that you used to love going to a particular place as a child. You do not make a big deal of it. You move on to something else. And then 2 months later, completely out of nowhere, they bring it up. They say something like, "Didn't you say you used to go there when you were little?" And for a second, you almost cannot believe they remembered that, because it felt so insignificant when you said it. But it was not insignificant to them. That is the point. Their brain held onto it because you are significant to them. And in that small moment of recall, they are showing you something they would never say directly. What this means for you is important. Stop waiting for the big romantic gesture. Stop measuring their feelings against how openly expressive other people might be. An avoidant who remembers the details of your life is an avoidant who is paying deep attention to you. And deep attention is not something an avoidant gives to just anyone. It is actually one of the rarest and most genuine forms of care they know how to offer. Now, this next point is something most people completely overlook because it happens in moments of conflict rather than moments of warmth. And yet it tells you more about how an avoidant feels than almost anything else. This one is going to reframe something that has probably been causing you a lot of pain. Because when an avoidant gets difficult during conflict, when they shut down or go cold or say something that feels like a wall going up, most people read that as proof that the relationship does not matter to them. But I want you to look at this from a completely different angle. Think about what an avoidant does when something or someone genuinely means nothing to them. They leave. Cleanly, completely, without looking back. There is no argument, no shutdown, no wall. There is just absence. Because you do not fight with something you do not care about. You do not shut down in front of someone who does not affect you. The shutdown, the tension, the difficulty during conflict, as painful as it is actually evidence of investment. Here is the psychology behind it. Avoidant individuals have what researchers call a deactivating strategy. When emotional intensity rises, their nervous system responds by trying to lower the emotional temperature as fast as possible. This can look like going quiet, becoming cold, deflecting, or suddenly finding reasons why the relationship is flawed. These are not signs of indifference. They are signs of overwhelm. And you only become overwhelmed by something that has power over you. Something that matters. There is a specific pattern I have seen repeatedly in the people I work with. An avoidant partner will shut down in the middle of a difficult conversation. They go cold, they stop engaging, they might even say something dismissive that cuts deep. And the person on the receiving end walks away convinced that the avoidant does not care. But then something happens that contradicts that conclusion entirely. The avoidant comes back to the conversation. Maybe not immediately, maybe hours later or the next day. But they come back. They might not apologize perfectly. They might not have the emotional language to fully explain themselves. But they re-engage. They try again. Picture this. You bring up something that has been bothering you about the dynamic between you two. Maybe you tell them you have been feeling disconnected. And instead of the warm, open response you needed, they go quiet. Their energy shifts. They give you short answers and the conversation dies. You feel shut out and dismissed. You go to bed that night feeling more alone than before you said anything. And then the next morning they send you a message. Not a full acknowledgement of everything you said, but something, a small reach, a question about your day, a reference to something you both share. They are not gone. They came back to the bridge even if they could not fully cross it yet. What this means for you is this. The measure of an avoidance attachment is not how gracefully they handle emotional intensity. They were never taught to handle it gracefully. The measure is whether they stay in the orbit of the relationship even when things get hard. Whether they come back after the shutdown. Whether the conflict ends in distance that closes again rather than distance that grows forever. If they are still there, still returning, still trying in their limited way, that is not nothing. That is actually everything. And I need you to stay with me here because this next point changes everything about how you understand the way an avoidant shows up in the ordinary moments of daily life. This is perhaps the most important thing I will tell you today. And I want you to really sit with this one because it is so easy to miss in the moment. It feels small when it happens, but psychologically it is enormous. Avoidant individuals guard their inner world very carefully, not because they are cold or unfeeling, but because that inner world is the one place they have always felt safe. When vulnerability led to pain early in life, when opening up meant getting hurt or dismissed or overwhelmed, the inner world became a sanctuary, a place nobody could reach, nobody could touch, and they learned to protect it fiercely without even realizing they were doing it. So when an avoidant lets you in, even slightly, even in ways that seem minor on the surface, that is not a small thing. That is an enormous thing. That is them doing something their entire nervous system is wired to prevent. Here is the psychology behind it. Researchers John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, the founders of attachment theory, identified that all human beings, regardless of their attachment style, carry what Bowlby called a secure base need. The deep biological need to have one person in the world with whom they feel safe enough to be real. Avoidant individuals spend most of their lives denying that need exists. But it does exist. It never stops existing. And when they find someone who feels safe enough, that need begins to surface. Slowly, carefully, in the smallest possible ways first. A detail about their childhood. A fear they have never said out loud. A dream they gave up on. A wound they have never shown anyone. Picture this. You are sitting together and the conversation moves somewhere unexpected. And they say something that surprises you. Something real. Maybe they mention a difficult relationship they had with a parent. Maybe they tell you about something they failed at that still bothers them. Maybe they share a fear about their future that they immediately try to walk back with humor or deflection. And you almost miss it because it was wrapped in casualness. But underneath the casual delivery was something raw and genuine. Something they do not show people. That moment was not accidental. Avoidants do not accidentally reveal their inner world. Everything that comes out of that protected space comes out because something in them decided, even unconsciously, that you were safe enough to receive it. And that decision, that unconscious choice to let you slightly pass the wall, is one of the most significant signs of genuine attachment they are capable of showing. What this means for you specifically is this. Pay attention to the moments when they share something unguarded. When the polished, controlled version of themselves slips for just a second and something real shows through. Do not gloss over those moments. Do not treat them as throwaway conversation. Because to an avoidant, those moments cost something. They require a kind of courage that does not come easily to someone who has spent their whole life keeping people at a careful distance. When they let you see even a small piece of the real interior landscape of who they are telling you something they cannot say directly. They are telling you that you are different, that you matter in a way that makes the risk feel worth it. Before I continue, I want you to think about your own situation right now. Has there been a moment like this? A moment where they showed you something unguarded, something real, something they quickly covered back up with humor or a subject change? Hold on to that moment, because it means more than you probably gave it credit for at the time. Now, this next point is something that most people completely overlook because it happens not in what an avoidant says, but in what they consistently do when nobody is asking them to. This one is going to shift something fundamental in the way you have been reading this person. Because I think you have been looking for emotional consistency and missing behavioral consistency entirely. And for an avoidant, behavioral consistency is actually the louder language. Let me explain what I mean. When you are with an avoidant, you learn very quickly that their emotional availability fluctuates. Some days they are warm and present. Other days they are distant and unreachable. And because that emotional fluctuation is so front and center, so painful and so confusing, it becomes the main thing you track. You watch their emotional temperature constantly. You read every message for tone. You analyze every interaction for signs of warmth or coldness. And understandably so, because that inconsistency is exhausting to live inside of. But while you have been watching the emotional temperature, you may have been completely overlooking something else. Something quieter and far more consistent. The things they actually do. Here is the psychology behind it. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called actions as attachment signals. The idea is that for individuals who struggle to express emotion verbally or effectively, behavior becomes the primary channel through which attachment is communicated. An avoidant person who cannot say, "I need you," will instead show up at your door when you are sick. An avoidant who cannot say, "You are important to me," will remember your appointment and check in afterward. An avoidant who cannot say, "I am scared of losing you," will quietly make themselves a consistent presence in the practical landscape of your life. Picture this. You are going through a difficult time at work. Nothing dramatic, just a stressful period that you mentioned in passing. You did not ask for help. You did not make it a big deal. But a few days later, they send you something useful. An article related to what you are dealing with. An offer to help you think through a problem. Or they simply check in more frequently during that period without drawing attention to the fact that they are doing it. They would never frame it as emotional support. But that is exactly what it is. Or think about the smaller things. They remember when you have an early morning and they message you the night before. They notice when you seem off even when you have not said anything and they ask about it quietly. They make space for you in their routine in ways that are so normalized you might have stopped noticing them. They are there. Not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently, practically, reliably there. What this means for you is genuinely important. Avoidants speak in actions far more fluently than they speak in words or emotional expression. And if you have been discounting the actions because you are waiting for the emotional openness, you have been discounting the very language in which they are most honestly communicating their attachment to you. The practical showing up is not the consolation prize for not getting emotional intimacy. For an avoidant, it is often the purest form of love they currently know how to give. And when you start reading their behavior as the language it actually is, the whole picture changes. Not because the emotional unavailability stops being real or stops being painful, but because you begin to see that alongside that unavailability there is something genuine running underneath it. Something that keeps choosing to show up even when everything in their wiring is telling them to protect themselves by stepping back. If nothing else from this video, I want you to remember this one thing. Love from an avoidant does not always feel like love. But that does not mean it is not love. Sometimes it looks like a practical gesture at exactly the right moment. Sometimes it looks like a quiet and consistent presence that never quite disappears no matter how much distance gets created. And learning to see it for what it is gives you something incredibly valuable. Clarity. Real clarity about what is actually happening between you. Now, this next point is one that even the people I work with closely are often surprised by when I explain it. Because it involves something an avoidant does that feels like the opposite of attachment but is actually one of the deepest signs of it. This one is going to explain something that has probably confused you more than almost anything else in this entire dynamic. And once you understand the psychology behind it, a pattern that felt completely random and cruel is going to start making a very specific kind of sense. You have probably noticed it. Things are going well between you, better than they have been in a while. The connection feels real, the warmth is there, the distance has closed, and you can feel something building between you that feels genuine and close and almost safe. And then right at that moment, right when everything feels like it is finally moving in the right direction, they pull back harder than usual. They become colder. More critical, more distant. They might pick a fight over something small. They might suddenly find flaws in the relationship they were not mentioning before. They might go quiet in a way that feels more deliberate than their usual withdrawals. And you are left completely blindsided wondering what happened to the person who was just right there with you. Here is the psychology behind it, and this is so important. There is a specific pattern in avoidant attachment that researchers call the intimacy threat response. When emotional closeness reaches a certain threshold, when the connection starts to feel genuinely deep and genuinely real, the avoidant nervous system interprets that closeness as a threat. Not consciously, not deliberately, but at a deep neurological level, the brain fires an alarm. Because closeness was dangerous once. Closeness meant losing yourself or getting hurt or being abandoned or overwhelmed. And so the system does what it was built to do. Creates distance. Urgently. Whatever it takes.